The Maya live in Central America, the landmass that connects North America to South America. The first Mayan country on our tour was El Salvador. We stayed in the capital, San Salvador, at the Crown Plaza Hotel. It sits right below one of the many volcanoes in the area. There we met our tour leader, Josue.
One very important thing for all of you this morning is I need to tell you thank you. Thank you very much for coming to Central America. You just have no idea how impactful your presence is going to be for the next 2 weeks in Central America.
Josue knew after our flights from North America that we needed to get some exercise, so he escorted us through the neighborhood to the gallery of one of El Salvador's most famous artists. We began to notice along the way a great deal of barbed wire strung along the tops of the buildings. This was because of the continuing tensions since the end of their Civil War, which lasted from 1979 to 92.
A very colorful gallery sits in this residential neighborhood. Artist Fernando Lort is known as El Salvador's national artist. Huge Mayan-influenced murals of his work cover the walls surrounding the parking lot out front. The bearded Lort is famous for the installation of a mural that once surrounded the entrance to the cathedral in San Salvador. This distinctive work was destroyed in 2011 by order of the Archbishop. The controversial act continues to outrage as the mural was considered Lort's most important work.
So from the south to the north, El Salvador is the smallest country in Latin America. The size of El Salvador is 21,000 square kilometers. For example, the same size of a place called New Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, our economic, our society is very related with USA. Please take a look at the business. We will show you a McDonald's, a Pizza Hut, a Walmart, a Citibank.
We're sorry about that. They didn't ask us if they could do it.
This is the 40% who work in the black market or in the informal market. You understand right now? This is the 40% of the population of Latin America, not only from El Salvador. Go to Brazil and you will find the same.
As we drove to a small tourist center, our local guide, Juan Carlos, explained how El Salvador's past civil war resulted in economic chaos that continues to mean a huge unemployment problem. Don't bring your dog or your gun into this restaurant. Do bring your appetite. The specialty of the house is the traditional Central American dish, the papusa. Made of cornmeal dough, it may be filled with cheese, pork, or refried beans. The corn flour is processed with an alkaline solution before cooking, making valuable nutrients available. This process, using local minerals, was developed by the Mayan people in this area about 1500 BCE.
This is our main monument in one of the parks. This is called Parque Bolívar, in honor of that guy in the horse. Bolívar is like the George Washington of Central America.
The main square of San Salvador contains the traditional layout found in many Spanish colonial countries. One of the four sides of each contains the mercantile, financial, political, or religious area. The National Palace was completed in 1911 and built through a tax of 1 colon for every 100 pounds of coffee exported. The religious side of the square holds the Cathedral of San Salvador. Now the pure white facade is bereft of its colorful Fernando Lort mural. Inside the cathedral, you find a traditional Roman Catholic interior. The main altar features panels with images of El Salvador, the Savior, donated by the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V in 1546. The cathedral is the burial site of Archbishop Oscar Romero, who was assassinated in El Salvador in 1980. His murder took place during the Civil War, after he urged Salvadorian soldiers to disobey their superiors, saying, "Brothers, you come from our own people. You're killing your own brother peasants." His blood-soaked shirt sits by the altar. Romero's tomb, in the crypt of the cathedral, is a place of pilgrimage. The bronze sepulchre was sculpted by Italian Paolo Borghi. It has 4 angels, each holding one of the 4 Gospels. Borghi said that when Romero spoke out against poverty, social injustice, violence, and assassinations, that Romero was inspired by the Gospels. Archbishop Romero was declared a Roman Catholic martyr in February 2015, paving the way for his beatification, which took place in May of 2015.
A very different church sits a few blocks away. From the outside, it resembles a concrete airplane hangar with a dome-shaped roof and in a nondescript gray. Ruben Martinez, one of El Salvador's most prominent sculptors, designed this church that was initially turned down by church authorities. The end result, finished in 1971, is a magnificent building renowned as one of the most unique churches in the Americas.
His age is 48 years old. ¿Desde hace cuánto es oficial de seguridad privada, don Mateo?
18 años.
After the war, 9 years during the war, he was a soldier.
Esto que está acá es un 1H de la Fuerza Aérea, Salvador.
This is over here, ladies and gentlemen, you have the helicopter, and the helicopter is the helicopter we used to use during the Civil War. The name of the helicopter is a H1N1, manufactured in USA, of course. And these are the symbol of his battalion during the Civil War. Y la el de el águila.
Es un águila que se refiere como tipo un halcón también. Se refiere a la Fuerza Aérea también.
He says he was part of the Air Force of El Salvador. He was part of the Air Force of El Salvador. That's why the helicopter, and also that's why the eagle, because the eagle is the symbol of our Air Force in El Salvador.
The security guard, Mateo Bahia, served with the government forces during El Salvador's Civil War. The right-wing military-led government fought against the left-wing guerrillas. The full-fledged Civil War lasted more than 12 years and saw extreme violence on both sides. It also included the recruitment of child soldiers, the deliberate terrorizing and targeting of civilians by death squads, and other human rights violations, mostly by the government-led military. Thousands of union leaders, activists, students, and teachers suspected of sympathizing with the left were murdered. An unknown number of people were disappeared during the Civil War. The United States contributed to the conflict by providing training and large amounts of military aid to the dictatorship of El Salvador. Finally, on January 16, 1992, a peace agreement was signed by the combatants. On the edge of the city is the Monument to Peace, created by the sculptor Ruben Martinez in 1994. It symbolizes the recent reconciliation of the right and left of the country. It's made of surrendered bullets and weapons and an impressive hope for peace.
We awoke to our view of a volcano and went down to have a buffet breakfast. Then we checked out of the Crown Plaza and drove to another museum.
All right, friends, we are on our way to the Museum of the Image and the Word. This is a museum which is the contrast of the military museum we saw yesterday, with the difference that this is very tiny, and it may be as big as maybe your master room in your house.
In El Salvador, there's always been a huge difference between the wealth of the right-wing landowners and the wages of left-wing people, mostly peasants. Peasants are consistently exploited, particularly in the coffee-growing regions. Working people who rebelled against government repression were ordered massacred by military dictator President Martinez. This led to a growing number of guerrilla movements to counteract these murders. Freedom fighter bands revolted against extreme right-wing death squads. Through the years, repressive governments fomented increased rebellion that ultimately turned into civil war between the military dictatorship and the people. A clandestine guerrilla radio station was created in the mountains of El Salvador's Morazan province.
Radio Venceremos emite su señal guerrillera desde el Frente Oriental Francisco Sánchez y a través de la banda internacional de los 40 metros.
The freedom fighters hid while creating programs from within the damp caves in the mountains. They broadcast testimonies and rebel music that challenged the government-controlled media's reporting on the country's civil war. Many freedom fighters used aliases.
Vivo en un país libre, cual solamente puede ser libre, en esta tierra, en este instante, y soy feliz porque soy gigante. Amo una mujer clara, que a mí me ama sin pedir nada, o casi nada, que no es lo mismo, pero es igual. Y si esto fuera poco, tengo mis cantos que poco a poco muelo y rehago habitando el tiempo, como le cuadra a un hombre despierto. Soy feliz, soy un hombre feliz y quiero que me perdonen por este día los muertos de mi felicidad. Soy feliz, soy un hombre feliz y quiero que me perdonen por este día los muertos de mi felicidad.
And on our way to Joya de Ceren to meet Salvador, who used to be the owner of that piece of land, and then the government decided to buy that piece of land for a fair price.
In 1976, farmer Salvador Hernandez watched as a bulldozer worked on his land preparing the site for new grain storage silos. The whole exposed a pre-Hispanic farming community that, like Pompey in Italy, was buried by the ash of a volcanic eruption in about the year 600. This is the late classical period of ancient Mayan civilization. Today, due to the extreme importance of the village, this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Underneath the layers of volcanic ash, the best preserved example of an ancient village in Mesoamerica is revealed. It has architectural remains grouped into compounds that include civic, religious, and household buildings. To date, a total of 18 structures have been identified, and 10 have been completely or partially excavated. All structures are made of earth, and important features such as thatched roofs and artifacts that were found in place have been recovered. The excavated structures include large public community buildings on the side of the plaza, 2 houses that were part of households, 3 storehouses, one was in the process of being remodeled, a kitchen, and a sweat bath sauna. On the northeast side of the plaza there is a religious building devoted to communal festivities and one where a shaman practiced. Rammed earth construction was used for the public buildings and sauna, and wattle and daub, which is highly earthquake resistant, for the household structures. The high degree of preservation includes organic materials, from garden tools and bean-filled pots to sleeping mats, animal remains, and religious items that normally deteriorate in tropical conditions. These were part of the subsistence and daily life of the inhabitants. They have been preserved as carbonized materials or as cast in the ash deposits, Several cultivated fields and other vegetation have also been uncovered, including fields containing maize plants, a garden with a variety of herbs, and an agave garden. Various trees, including guava and cacao, were also found. Due to the excellent preservation caused by the ash, the earthen structures and construction methods are visible and the layout of the village is easily recognized. The villagers must have suddenly abandoned this place as daily utensils and artifacts have been left in their original place of use. No human remains have been found.
Falls in Mesoamerica, in between two Americas, and this is an area which starts in Panoco River all the way down to Nicaragua. It's 500,000 square kilometers. Why did he use that term? Well, it happens to be that from the northernmost part of Mexico to Nicaragua, there are registered today 66 different ethnic groups or different cultures. Now, within these 66 different cultures, there's one called Maya. Now, you're making a trip, or you sign up for a trip to see a culture which never used the term Maya. It's a term that is new, it's an invention. Maya never called themselves that way. Let's say you ever meet my father, you ask him, are you a Maya? He possibly will think you're insulting him, because the word Maya doesn't exist in his vocabulary. The term Maya comes from the last voyage of Christopher Columbus. And there was a big boat off the coast of Honduras, and they were on their way to the north, and they replied where they were headed to. And the merchants replied, Ma-I-Am. It may be M-A-I-A-M or M-A-I-A-N. And the term eventually became Maya.
Our driver Oscar was waiting for us at the bus. Next stop, the border crossing between El Salvador and Honduras. While our paperwork was processed, Linda noticed a Mayan statue. "Hey, that looks like our dog Buddy," she said. We had a fairly long drive to get to our next stop, Copan Ruins in Honduras. It's the site of a very famous Mayan temple complex. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Center. We spent some of our time reviewing pictures until we arrived at our beautiful Clarion Hotel. We had a drink in the bar while we waited for our bags to be delivered. Dinner out that night. We pulled up to Twisted Tanya's. We walked through the colorful bar out onto the terrace. Okay, another glass of wine. It's included after all. Squash soup and roast chicken with vegetables and coleslaw, Honduras style.
Our first morning in Honduras was foggy as we walked through the garden into breakfast. Out on the patio, two chefs were making omelets and papusas. Add to that tamales, potatoes, papaya, and pineapple, and you have a very hearty Honduran breakfast. After eating, we gathered to drive out to the archaeological site of Copan Ruins. First, we went to a dig being worked on by Harvard. Up the first of many stairs we would climb on this trip, we found a large canvas protecting the dig and its ancient stones. Just beyond was a reconstruction of part of the temple there. It's new stone and not painted the many bright colors that would have adorned an original temple. After a group picture, we left the Harvard dig to go to the entrance of the World Heritage Site at Copan.
Now, we're only going to see this area for about 3 hours, only 1 mile. But look at the extension of the site. And this is the most fertile part of the valley. So in Copan, there have been close to 4,000 buildings. That doesn't mean that they've been restored.
Copan was the capital city of a major Mayan dynasty that lasted from about 465 to 822, the classical Mayan period. Copan is located in a lush, fertile valley created by the Copan River that runs alongside the city. The valley was an ideal location for a pre-Hispanic community. Hunting, fishing, and farmland were all found in the Copan Valley that was also ideally located for trade. The Copan River connected with other important rivers in a network that ran from the Pacific to the Atlantic Oceans.
Something very special happened to understand the Maya better, and it's that experts started to use the interpretations of a man from Soviet Union, a guy called Yuri Norozov, that he discovered documents of colonial time that permitted to cross-reference pronunciation of syllables in Spanish with the pronunciation of Maya hieroglyphics. And this was an amazing discovery because he was able to read the sounds of the glyphs, and using a modern Maya language in use, he was able to translate what he was reading. And that was like magic.
Stela P, one of the oldest in Copan, is a magnificent structure showing a date of 623 among its glyphs. The image of the 11th ruler of Copan includes on its front some still visible original paint. Dynastic conflicts between the kings at Copan and the other Mayan kings meant constant, ongoing war. One of the altars associated with Mayan bloodletting ceremonies, Altar Q, shows a dedication date of 776 and is one of the best-known masterpieces to have been carved before Copan began its decline. Altar Q isn't just important to the history of Copan, it's one of the most important monuments in the history of Mesoamerica. Shortages due to constant war finally resulted in rampant disease. There was also a massive overpopulation in Copan. When its last known king came to the throne in 822, he commissioned another altar similar in style to that of Altar Q, but the monument was never finished. Its date glyph is used as the mark when the dynasty ended.
Built by a Copan ruler in 715 to mark his 20 years in power, this temple has a cosmic doorway that features the Mayan creator gods responsible for holding up the sky. Beneath the doorway is a carved step which features symbolic skulls and glyphs representing the words of the ancestors who lived within the underworld. The temple was built to be a dwelling place for the gods and a place where the god king of Copan could physically mingle with his ancestors and other gods. Very active ant colonies live at Copan. Be careful where you walk. The ants are part of the natural destruction of the site, along with vegetation and weather. The Copan buildings suffered significantly from these forces of nature in the centuries between the site's abandonment and the rediscovery of the ruins. The first post-Spanish conquest mention of Copan was in 1576. An expedition to the ruins in 1834 was taken on behalf of the government of Guatemala, and subsequently several expeditions sponsored by Harvard University were undertaken. Harvard continues to be active at Copan to this day.
Features of the king were exaggerated. You see he is depicted bigger than life size. His earrings are big, headdress is huge. Originally all of this was painted red and there are traces of red color on it. There are some statues that have more color than this. And all of these monuments will have a hieroglyphic inscription where we have the date of the monument and we have the name of the individual depicted and also a brief description of why the monument was made. Reading the hieroglyphic inscriptions on these monuments, experts have been capable to reconstruct the dynastic sequences and try to understand the life of the kingdoms and also the political relationship that
You can see two small human figures sprouting from behind the king's knees. They represent the king's ancestors being born, like ears of corn, at the beginning of time. Stela N, dedicated in 761, is an entire storybook of images that are carved in full relief. It's hard to imagine all of these temples, stela, and altars in the full color they would have held when created, and hard to imagine what activities might have taken place here. The first Spanish who came did document some of the events they witnessed in lurid, colorful detail. And we have artists' recreations. But as you wander the ruins and listen to the explanations and speculation, it challenges your imagination. Copan is a magnificent sight, a marvelous place to contemplate these fine and intriguing monuments, and reflect on one of the greatest civilizations ever to grace the earth. As we departed Copan, we passed by an area built for an activity we could more easily understand. This was a ball court. Mayans played a game with a ball they made from solid rubber. Pre-Hispanic ball courts have been found throughout Mesoamerica. The ball courts vary considerably in size, but all have long, narrow alleys with slanted side walls against which the balls could bounce. In many ways, the ancient Mayans were a great deal like the modern Mayans. Walking through Copan, there are so many things to see. Up in the trees, you can find bromeliads. Then there's also a flock of macaws. Hunted almost to extinction for their feathers and for pets, these beautiful multicolored birds have been reintroduced in this area.
The town of Copan Ruins is near the archaeological site. It has a small, flower-laden Spanish-style square. Hats are important this near to the equator, sitting at 14 degrees north. And the children are like kids everywhere, full of promise and fun. We drove back out into the countryside, passing fields of corn, the grain that's so important to the tradition and nourishment of the Mayans. Our destination? A place to learn about a different part of the culture. We went to the home of a local archaeologist who has an additional business. The manager, Carolina Sandoval, greeted us.
So this is what's known as the tea and chocolate place, but that's really our marketing name to attract visitors up here, since if you notice we're a bit out of town. Yeah, so if you mention chocolate, everyone will come after you. And this is what we consider our visitor center. We have, as a family, we started reforesting a few acres of completely eroded and deforested land back in 2003.
Once again, out on a terrace, we enjoyed some herbal tea while Josue relaxed in a hammock, and gray-tailed grackle worked on their nest in the trees. This forest includes the interestingly named stinking tofu that's actually a major food for the indigenous population. All the while, the haunting fragrance of roasting cacao beans drifted through this perfect afternoon in Honduras.
Some people, the best way to do it is recommended to ferment the seed once you open it. Let it ferment for 3 to 5 days depending on your way of doing it. So the quality of the bean is better because the bean will absorb the flavor of the pulp. So yeah, good quality cacao. The fermentation process is very important. That can change the quality of bean very quick. Then once you come here and this you put the unroasted, just the dry seeds of the fermented seeds in this traditional clay pot.
I would think that would be great. Yeah, and you could get it like, yeah. You might be yes, I am getting the lemongrass too. Okay. With none. I would know. Yeah.
Up a steep hill, of course. That night we went back into Copan Ruins to dine at the spectacular Nia Lola's restaurant. Once again, we were prohibited from bringing in our guns. Well, hopefully no one else could either. We passed a chef cooking our dinner, the meat for kebabs sizzling on an open barbecue, and then passed an interesting collection of junk as we went up the stairs to the terrace. After a look at the menus, we decided this was definitely our kind of place. Thus began a truly memorable meal. Linda ordered but didn't get the right meal.
What did you get? What is it?
When Linda's meal finally came, it was huge, and the nearby German tourists came over to see its photo-worthy abundance. Well, maybe they just wanted to take pictures of margarita-filled America.
Oh.
When you put this on Facebook, you send it
They don't know my name.
You said you wanted to advertise your health.
Wow. Oh. That's just have a great time. Thank you very much.
After all that uneaten abundance, Linda wanted to thank the chef and then ultimately gave her meal to the security guard at the gate of our hotel.
¿Tiene algo para tomarlo? Muchas gracias.
Oh, and the water to go with it. Okay, so the beverage.
I hope you slept well after laughing a little bit last night, some of us. We are going to make our first stop in about 1 minute.
Diana would like.
All right, friends, let me introduce you to Lito, Luis over here, and Selvin, who is very strong, nice grip. And so the stone they use here is called puff. They bring puff from the farthest hill you may see that way. The stone when he was 10 years old. ¿Y ahorita tiene?
Ahorita tengo 63.
Now he's 63, so it's 53 years in the business of stone carving. Okay, Manolito, ¿lo que está trabajando es mezcla o no?
No, esta es piedra de caolín.
Ah, okay. He calls that kaolin, that stone. I'm asking Lito, what is it that he's done that can be seen in the archaeology museum? This has sometimes the scholars, when unearthing the items, some of the sculptures were missing arms or apron so the aprons, hands. Yeah, this is bone, carving bone, of course, is a lot harder. And these are tools he uses for that. ¿Por cuánto tiempo te vas a hacer para eso?
Unos 5 días.
I'm asking how long are you going to take to make this 5 days?
Tengo 2 días.
Yeah, he's been working 2 days already. Yeah, carbon. Yeah.
But these are the 16 Mayan. And what are the glyphs on top?
The hieroglyphs, they talk of the moment when the ruler was in power.
A la capotín, tin, 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 que esta noche va a llover. A la capotín, tin, 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 que esta noche va a llover. A la capotín, tin, 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 que esta noche va a llover. A la capotín, tin, 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 que esta noche va a llover. Asómate, niña hermosa, dueña de mi corazón, y escucharás las que
Ancient Mayan cutters used stone tools to make their beautiful limestone creations. They also deforested the landscape using 20 trees for each square meter of plaster. This devastation helped to ensure the collapse of ancient Mayan civilization.
A la capotín, tin, 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 que esta noche va a llover. A la capotín, tin, 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 que esta noche va a llover. A la capotín, tin, 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 que esta noche va a llover. A la capotín, tin, 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 hasta el amanecer.
On to Belize. At the border, they require that all the baggage be removed from our bus and walked through the gates. Then they were reloaded, and we were on our way into Belize and overland to Belize City. There we stayed at the Radisson near the beach and were greeted by a local character, Belize style.
You Americans are loved in Belize. Look in this eye or this eye. Tell me that's a lie. Better Belize it.
Belize City was our only stop on the Caribbean. Formerly known as British Honduras, as a result, Belize uses English more frequently. This is a cruise port town. Out on the Caribbean sat 2 large cruise ships that were tendering passengers to tour the area. Passengers were brought to the dock near our hotel.
The first part of the adventure is the bus ride. The second part of the adventure is the boat ride. And then we do the hiking when we get to Lamanai. So that's the third part of the adventure. These are the politicians. These are the ambassadors, the diplomats, the CEOs, the attorneys. Those are the kind of people that can afford a property right here. This boulevard is one of 2 boulevards we have in the city. This one is the longest one we have in the city. This boulevard is called the Princess Margaret Drive.
You siguru amule yele ya le meri wakeira siguru ugune
was something we drink throughout the Caribbeans, right? And then this one here is made from the cashew. You guys ever seen the cashew fruit before? The fruit.
Yeah.
Fruit. Everyone's seen the fruit. Who has it? This is the seed here that you're familiar with. Recognize the shape of that seed there? Well, the same seed that we eat from Planet's peanuts, we eat the kernel inside, but the seed happens to be attached to a fruit, but attached to outside of the fruit, right? This is a picture of the fruit here. See the seed here? This is the seed right there, and that's the fruit up top. And that fruit swells until it becomes banana yellow. Spongy and have a lot of juice like watermelon. From that part is where we make the cashew wine, right? So would anyone like to sample?
Our driver noticed a bird alongside the road. Our local guide, Nate, said it was a 10,000 point spotting for bird watchers. Very rare to see.
On the left, in the savannah, there is the largest bird in my country. This is the Jabiru stork. It is the only all-white feathered stork in the world.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Today we will navigate 25 miles on the river. We're gonna travel south and upstream. When I stop, you'll hear me say, look at the right, look at the left, look 10 feet up, look 20 feet up above the water. When I stop, I will also say, look at 1 o'clock, look at 2 o'clock, look at 3 o'clock, look at 10 o'clock. And if you do not understand when I say 10 o'clock, don't look at your watch.
We walked into Lamanai, another ancient Mayan city-state that was inhabited for over 3,000 years. Excavation began in the 1970s.
In Belize, we don't have quetzal birds. What we have related to the quetzal bird is trogons.
The red bottom.
Yeah, it has red on the belly. Move a little bit more to this area. See, lady?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you got it now. So everyone got to see the black orchid? Sure. It does not get black. That's the color. It's purple. It has a bit of fluorescent yellow-green color also on it. Get ready to see the most famous structure of this Maya site. Before we get to see that structure, look right here. What you are about to see was once found covered with trees, covered with dirt, just like this. Archaeologists were unable to see the faces on the walls and the steps that you're going to see right now. All the rest of the buildings you're going to see later used to look like that before the archaeologists came along.
At Lamanai Ruins, Nate explained how the local indigenous people worked in this area to build their homes and the many temples here. This includes the fabulous mask temple with its enormous 13-foot-high masks.
There's a second one over there, but like I said, a woman is in that one and a man is in this one. Maybe they were related, maybe they were not, we don't know for sure. Maybe in the future, with more tests that they do here, we'll find out.
Our expedition artist, Harry, did a quick sketch of this amazing mask temple. Yes, he's really good. It rained on and off all day as we toured Lamanai. It's tough to get excited, or even interested, in the old ruins of the High Temple when out in the pouring rain. It's also hard to make out the eroded carvings in this kind of weather. The High Temple is 108 feet high, and normally we could have climbed it for the view of the Lamanai River, but it was too dangerous in the rain. We moved to an area we did recognize, the distinctive slanting sides of the ball court. The rules are lost, but it is known that the players used their shoulders, elbows, hips, thighs, and knees. Any game today was rained out. The Jaguar Temple was our last stop in Lamanai. The rain ended just as we approached this ancient Mayan ruin. This temple was another challenge for our imaginations. Can you see the jaguar faces in those stones? Without its brilliantly colored paint, this jaguar doesn't jump out at you.
friends, it's time to go back to the bus.
No.
It's gonna be a little bit shorter in distance and shorter in time. If I spot a rarely seen bird like 1,000 points, I'll slow down. If I
Okay.
see a crocodile, I'll slow down. From Lamanai.
Good for you.
We returned to the Radisson in Belize City. We were anticipating the next stop on our adventure. Our fourth country on the route of the Maya was Guatemala and its capital, Guatemala City. We stayed in the downtown area at the Stofela. In the morning we had a hearty breakfast, and then we all gathered in the lobby in excited anticipation of our day. Josue instructed us that we were to wear our brightest colors so he could find us in the crowds. Is that bright enough? Rod wore what he considered his most appropriate necklace. We were going to the celebration of the Day of the Dead and the annual Barreletes, or Kite Festival. We drove through Guatemala City to arrive at a town called Santiago Sac, where we walked through the vendor-filled streets to meet a princess.
Angelica in the middle. She has been crowned the princess in town. Every October 17th, they make a cultural night right here. 10 girls participate in order to become the princess. And at the end, they only choose 3. So we have Angelica, who is the winner. And then we have Doncella, and she is representing the pioneers. The pioneers meaning this is one of the towns which make kites.
The princess and her court paraded through downtown, led by a 2-man band, a flute player and a drummer. Being chosen princess for a year comes with the responsibility to represent Maya culture and values. The winner must speak the Mayan language of Cachecol. The local festival association seeks out Maya music, food, traditions, and representatives for this event, with an aim to infuse the region with the appreciation for the value of Mayan traditions. These local kite festivals have been taking place for about 80 years. They include huge crowds who celebrate a mix of Maya and Catholic religious traditions with the creation of kites. The celebrations are an extension of the ancient Maya cult of the dead that dates back to about 1800 BCE. Since these ancient times, the Maya celebrate the Day of the Dead as a happy family event to honor their ancestors. They believe their spirits visit the earth once a year around November 1st. This concept of celebrating the cycle of life is a strong tradition with the many indigenous people. The origin of these festivals is the Maya Day of the Dead and the Catholics' All Saints' Day. The Catholics attach their traditions to those of the Maya when the Spaniards conquered these people. The origin of the kites, or barreletes, is debated. Many attribute their roots to children, who are often uninterested in the traditional Day of the Dead task of decorating a deceased ancestor's grave. Thus, children were given kites to entertain themselves. This story says the custom then developed into the making of these complex barreletes of today. We passed through the downtown and came into a square where we were to regroup before going up into the cemetery.
It was pandemonium. Large mausoleums came first as we entered, with spectators everywhere, including above us. Beautiful flowers were displayed on the graves, put there by their families to honor their ancestors. We had come to see the kites called barreletes gigantes. In preparation for this celebration to honor their ancestors, the family plots are cleared of weeds, which are put in big piles, and then flowers are placed on the graves. It's a day of celebration, of remembering and honoring those who came before. It's also an opportunity for vendors to sell their brightly colored items to the hordes of spectators. How about some hair extensions? Months before the kite festival, teams of people begin to work on these masterpieces that take great skill and patience to complete. There are prizes for the best design, but the teams also hope for admiration of their magnificent kites to bring the honor and the respect of their peers. Their frames are made of bamboo, and the kites made of tissue paper and sometimes Tyvek. The designs are incredibly intricate and often hold a religious, folkloric, or political message. From their workshops, the giant stationary kites are taken to this sacred hillside. The huge ones are never flown, but raised on ropes for all to admire.
We walked under one of the flying kites as we left our first stop for this day. We drove over to the opposite side of the valley. Josue wanted us to experience a quiet Day of the Dead celebration in a small cemetery. We could see the barriletes gigantes displayed across the hillside. Passing a cornfield, we followed along as families came into the cemetery. A man was making shaved ice drinks at the entrance. The kids played with their small kites, families sat on the graves, as women attached huge, magnificent floral arrangements to the mausoleums. Many families were visiting their ancestors in this most colorful and moving celebration of the Day of the Dead cycle of life.
Hello.
One group in the far corner welcomed us over to their family plot. Dressed in their finest, they were particularly generous and kind to we American strangers. We watched some kids try to catch a breeze with their kites as we left these warm and wonderful Mayan people of Guatemala.
Come on, Olga, come on.
Aquí está bien.
Sí, gracias. We watched as the chicken buses stopped quickly for passengers. Then up another very steep hill to a soccer field filled with amazing activity. Our final stop this Day of the Dead was Sampango. We later heard that close to 125,000 people attended this event in 2015. There's a different story for how the Sampango festival got started. According to tradition, the spirits of the dead come down in early November to annoy and bother residents. Exasperated, they ask a shaman what they should do to scare away these spirits. The shaman suggested they take big pieces of paper, let them fly in the wind, and make lots of noise to scare away the bad spirits. Eventually, somebody figured out that kites were a more effective spirit-scaring device, and thus another story of the kite tradition. We do know that the modern kite flying has been recorded here as beginning around 1940. The teams pull on their ropes to get the kites into the air, hoping to catch a very big wind. Many kites crash and are carried away in disappointment. Kite construction is not only labor-intensive, but cost-intensive as well. For the bigger kites, it can take as long as 4 to 6 months to build. When material costs are added up, the price can climb to well over $5,000. There is real competition. Kites are slotted into categories according to their size. The smaller kites are graded on design and actual flight time. The biggest kites, barriletes gigantes, may be flight ready, but rarely get off the ground due to the lack of a strong enough wind. The Mayan Day of the Dead in Guatemala is a truly unforgettable experience.
Sí, cabal. ¿Cómo van a hacer su intento de elevación? Ellas se van a ir adelante. Federación Maya. Federación Maya en este momento, entonces. ¿Listos? ¿Preparados? ¿Se organizan? Cuidado, cuidado, cuidado. Señorita, de esta agrupación, ¿y qué les parece entonces si como en la primera ocasión les brindamos un fuerte aplauso para la agrupación Orquídeas? ¡Fuerte aplauso! ¡Escuche! ¡Fuerte el aplauso! La agrupación Orquídeas en su segundo intento, entonces, ahí está, haciendo su intento de elevación, sin embargo las condiciones de viento no son las adecuadas. Vamos a su intento, las proporciones son buenas. Cuidado, cuidado con la cola. Se está llevando una persona, cuidado, cuidado, cuidado. Todas las mujeres que en este momento están haciendo su intento de elevación. Porque este barrilete ha de pesar y sobre todo una persona se le va a hacer muy difícil. Otra más en el otro costado, por favor. Vean que la cola esté recto. Cuidado, cuidado, ahí va, en ese momento entonces. La agrupación Federación Maya. ¡Coloniza, señores! Colonicemos entonces en ese momento el hermoso barrilete que intenta hacer su elevación. Vamos a darle el aplauso que se merece. Fuerte, fuerte, fuerte el aplauso, la ovación que se escuche. ¡El aplauso!
Hasta